Hello, everybody. Welcome to the B Movies Podcast. My name is William Bibbiani. Everyone calls me Bibbs. We're here talking to director James Ponsoldt.
Yep.
Ponsoldt of the Spectacular Now, one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the year. Check out the clip.
You're 17 years old. You don't have an ex-boyfriend?
No.
Really?
Sutter, guys don't look at
That's
me
shocking.
like that. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely, guys look at you like that.
No.
I just saw two guys looking at you like that. Eric Wolf and Cody Dennis were 100%
we were
hitting
just
on
talking.
you.
They were not hitting on me. No. There's absolutely
yes,
no
they were.
way.
Why don't you think they were hitting on you?
Because they weren't.
Because you're what? Amy, you're absolutely beautiful.
Oh my God, no.
Hi, James.
Hi, how's it going?
Thank you for coming up.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay. So The Spectacular Now is a really good movie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Everyone seems to be in agreement on it. It's got a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, do you read the reviews? Are these going to your head at this point?
They don't go to my head. I kind of, if it's a good review, I kind of notice that it's good and try to not read it too closely and let it go to my head. If it's bad, I kind of obsess over it.
Do you read the bad reviews? Do you actually like?
More than I try to. I'm trying to get more sort of healthy with my relationship to reviews. But yeah. I read them all eventually. Yes.
Yeah. Is anyone like making a point that you're just like, ooh, yeah, that was an awkward subplot? Is anyone like saying anything that's hitting you that like maybe you'll learn from?
I'm sure. I mean, it's sort of. I mean, like if someone came up to you in a bar and like punched you in the gut because they didn't like something that you did, you would probably like. In the moment, you're just like, ow, my gut, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And then maybe a week later, you would reflect on why that person did that thing. At this point, it's still so fresh.
Yeah.
That
certified fresh. Actually.
Yeah, certified fresh. But like the movie having just come out, that the bad stuff. It will resonate. But at this point, it's just like, oh man, I shouldn't take this too personally.
Well, you should take it personally when they like it.
Yeah.
And everyone really likes it. And it strikes me as interesting because you put a qualifying statement in the title.
Yeah.
And that always feels like you're tempting a critic, and it's like Spectacular Now, and just the quote will be, not really.
Yeah.
And like everyone, I've seen people go for it.
Yep.
Like I think Richard Roper went for it. I went for it. I said it's a little spectacular. You know, were you nervous? Was there ever a point where you're thinking about changing the title?
100%. I mean, if it was an original screenplay, I probably would have. I wouldn't be that audacious. But given that Tim Tharp wrote a beautiful, beautiful book called The Spectacular Now, I don't think any of us wanted to change the name of his book.
Yeah.
So.
Now, the thing I think is sort of interesting about this movie is that there is a theme in a lot of films about how people need to live in the now, man.
Yeah.
You need to live in the now. You need to go party, man.
Yeah.
You need to live your life while you smell the roses. Yeah. And here's a movie about how that's actually kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Like maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
That is so unusual. Was that what attracted you to this film, or did this get discovered later? Tell me about that theme.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the duality of like that statement. I mean, The Spectacular Now could totally be the name of like an emo band. You know what I mean? with no irony, with no double edge sort of meaning. In this case, yeah, I mean, we're in LA right now. There's a lot of people who talk about being present, being grounded, living in the now. And for a lot of people, that holds a lot of meaning, and I think it can hold a lot of meaning for our main character, who's 18, and an 18-year-old kind of delusional boy. Like, what it also means is living in the now without any sort of moral or ethical accountability for anything that happens later, which is sort of like a get-out-of-jail-free card for him for how his choices impact and affect the people around him. So it's kind of cowardly and lazy a little bit for him.
It's a coming-of-age story, and I feel like some people think that's almost a dirty word.
Yeah.
Is that a dirty word for you? Do you think, or do you embrace that, or do you feel this is more than that?
I mean, I like the idea of abstracting things, you know what I mean? In as much as, like, I think any genre, like, can sort of, you can unpack the genre. I think genre conceits are great, actually.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I mean, I think this film, a romance probably is more commercial than coming of age. It suggests something sort of small or precious or whatever, but coming of age can be awesome, and coming of age can be someone who's 17, or it can be someone who's 30, or lots of my friends who are in their 40s still have yet to come of age. So it can mean any number of things, and I think hopefully if you can make it a little murky, what it means, and add depth and texture and specificity and honesty, it's a great thing, like with any genre.
But I feel like it's interesting that the teen genre has gone in a very specific direction over the last 5-10 years or so, where we'll do a coming-of-age story, but it has to be done through a veil of action. Like, you can't just come of age. You have to come of age and be a wizard.
Yeah.
You have to come of age and it's a dystopia and you'll have to kill each other.
Yeah.
And here's a movie about shit that could really happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it just speaks to a fundamental distrust of audiences from the people making these films or the sort of multinational corporations behind the companies and people that are making these films. I think a good place to come from as a storyteller is just respect your audience. Audiences are really smart. If you put 300 people in a room, and it's a horror movie, people are all going to say, don't go in that room. People know, people get it. And, if you tell something specifically and honestly, it's always going to seem fresh to people. And I don't know why it's not enough just to have a really emotional, surprising, relatable story. But that being said, I don't think it's just that the smart, quote-unquote, teen movies have gone out the window for the most part from studios. I think it's that smart movies for adults have as well. You know what I mean? I mean, all those movies from the 70s that everyone loves, like Nashville, Five Easy Pieces, Jaws, whatever it is, like they're not really getting made. A lot of those have really gone the way of like 1 hour cable television.
Well, they can't be hits anymore. Like The Godfather was like a smash hit when it came out, and now our smash hits are, Transformers. The paradigm has completely shifted away from sort of intelligent.
Well, a lot of it comes down to like 4-quadrant stories that can move product. They can move action figures and are ready made for a sequel. Obviously, Godfather led its way to a great sequel, but that's the exception.
How many quadrants is Spectacular now?
Oh man, it's like more than 4. It's like how many quadrants could there be? It's every quadrant plus 2. No, I mean, I think the hope is that teenagers who are really smart and can call BS on things when they see it will find it totally relatable, and and we live in a YouTube generation where like we just have like very honest, intimate, immediate things happening. But I think hopefully for slightly older audiences in their 20s, 30s, maybe people who grew up with those movies in the 80s, the Cameron Crowe movies, the John Hughes movies, that there'll be a level of nostalgia both for those movies but also for that time. And I think nostalgia is different than sentimentality because nostalgia is laced with an awareness that stuff can be really painful. There's a lot of anxiety, and being 17 or 18, it can really suck.
Well, I felt the same way when I was watching Spectacular Now. I was like, we had the perks of being a wallflower last year, and that was very good. But for the most part, we just don't get movies made. I feel like we get movies made at young audiences and not for them. And here's one that seems to sort of understand them. But I think the trick with that is that movies are made by adults. 900 times out of whatever, plus one of that. And it's easy to sort of forget what it was like when you're young. And I think it's even harder now because you're right, this is a YouTube generation, for lack of a better buzzword. And I'm not sure I know what teenagers are going through now, and yet this felt really universal. And you have technology in this movie, but it's not really pervasive. You have some online chatting, a couple of cell phones, but for the most part, it feels like Spectacular Now could be an 80s movie. It could even be a 50s movie. In many, was that intentional?
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually the hardest thing, I discovered in making a film, and especially with young people, because a lot of those movies from the 80s about young people, the ones that don't last, they're all about sort of shoulder pads and synth music, is that they included everything. I think there's a cynical, very obvious approach of like, what are kids into right now? What are the buzzy articles in like Newsweek about like youth trends? We're going to cram it into a movie.
Well, Breakfast Club, I think, is the prototypical example of that. Like every cliche we can think of, and it's a good movie, but like they're all in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, really good storytelling is what you leave out, and I think the goal here really was to have a movie that would, in the way that American Graffiti or Last Picture Show or Splendor in the Grass or Rebel Without a Cause are still timeless and are still watched. At least they exist in a time, but you're not taken out by the pop culture signifiers. A lot of it was what we excluded, and that really we put an importance on the main characters, their emotional wants and needs. That was far more important than, oh yeah, kids are wearing skinny jeans, so they have to have skinny jeans, which would date the movie immediately in 10 years.
There's so many teenagers right now who just can't stop talking about Splendor in the Grass.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually true, but we have like this coming of age tradition.
Yeah.
And are those like your favorite films in that tradition? Do you have anything that isn't?
Though, those are some of them, and 400 Blows and Kes and like the Apu films. There's films from different countries, different times that resonate with me. But for instance, I think right now, if you wanted to take a really cynical approach to making movies for young audiences, one could say, hey, we should shoot it on an iPhone, and it'll be like a found footage movie, and isn't that cool?
Ooh.
And we've seen that movie.
It's Chronicle.
Yeah. We've seen that movie, and the good parts of those movies will last, and some of the things that are a little more superficial and of the moment will age. Some well, some not so well. So the goal here was to have, the movie really exist in a time and a place, but actually vast swaths of it could be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because honestly, 17, 18-year-old kids don't really change that much. They're their hopes and anxieties, their hormonal whatever is always kind of working on a continuum.
Yeah. Now, you had a tricky, I think, at least it appears to me, you had a tricky casting decision to make on the part of Amy and Sutter. Because Sutter has to be extremely likable, but you do have to come to realize that he's kind of a terrible person in some ways, and he needs to grow up. And Amy needs to be wonderful but believable. You can't have a manic pixie dream girl and make this movie work. What was it easy to find Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley, or was there like a huge Scarlett O'Hara casting process, thousands of people coming in?
I mean, the film had an interesting history because it had kind of been around, and during the course of that, a lot of this predated me even being involved with it. But a lot of people did sort of come in and read for the parts. But for me, once I was on board, I mean, I'd heard that Shailene had read the script, which really excited me because I'd seen her in The Descendants. That's where I first became aware of her. Was blown away. She reminded me. You know, she had a lack of vanity and intelligence, and just there was a specific quality of like adolescent kind of angst and almost being grating, but ultimately being sort of born out of pain that I related to. And she reminded me of like a young Sissy Spacek or Deborah Winger or something like that. Like I just hadn't seen a young actress like her in a long time. So I was thrilled that maybe she could play that part. And then Miles, I'd seen in Rabbit Hole, very heavy drama, he went head to head in my mind with Nicole Kidman. And then I saw him again in Footloose, in the Footloose remake.
He's so good in that movie.
He's so good, and it's a completely different performance, and it's this incredible range in a way. If you almost flip-flop that, like Footloose to Rabbit Hole, that's kind of the arc of the character a little bit. Like there's an incredible range, like, hey, I'm life of the party guy that everybody has seen and actually been glorified in most movies about young people, Van Wilder, etc. And then slowly we strip it away and realize, actually that guy probably, or even Ferris Bueller, who it's like the movie's a fantasy, it's really fun, but actually that guy's kind of, if he's always like trying to get his friends to do crazy stuff, there's something kind of toxic about that guy, and actually is not so great to the girls in his life, and actually, where did he get this idea of masculinity, and what is he chasing, and our character's chasing this absent father figure. So, you know, in both cases I met with Miles and Shailene, they're brilliant, they have wonderful imaginations, they're great actors, and I was convinced that they were the two people for that. And they have very different energies, which was great. They're not the same people, and they kind of bump up against each other in a way that I think played out on screen, where you can see their curiosity with each other, but you can also see how they're not maybe meant for each other in the long haul.
Yeah, absent or I think sort of not particularly great parental figure seems to be a recurring theme in the three movies you've made so far. You've done Off the Black, you've done Smashed, you've done Spectacular now. Total coincidence?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm really interested. I mean, there's all the statistics that always get sort of thrown at us. What is it? More than 1 out of 2 sort of marriages end in divorce. But I mean, that was the case with like all the kids that I grew up with. My parents are still together, but most of my friends, like my wife's parents split up when she was a kid. Like most people I know didn't grow up with 2 parents. And there's like the idea of the nuclear family, which was what my parents did grow up with. It just doesn't exist. It's been obliterated. Yeah. So I think family really is whoever you make it with, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, whatever is a source of comfort and community and love. And I guess I'm interested in sort of the way that people cope with that and the way that people cope with childhood trauma, I guess.
Yeah. But the other thing that's interesting about all three of your movies is that at the center of it is a person with an alcohol problem.
Yeah.
Again, I ask, is that a coincidence?
I'm drunk right now, actually.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I've just been shooting straight vodka.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was, you know, Smash was a film that very much dealt with that, with a couple that sort of was codependent and also sort of alcohol was the foundation of their relationship, and then it leaves and destabilizes the relationship. With Off the Black, I mean, it was one of the details of Nick Nolte's character.
Yeah, it wasn't the focus, but it did seem like he had like notes saying, you know, less beer.
Yeah, no, it was part of who he was, and in this case, I mean, again, Spectacular Now started from a novel, you know, that Tim Tharp wrote, and so I mean, it was really executing the vision of Tim's construction of this character. I mean, it was really important for me with Sutter in this film that we not name the thing or hit it on the head or try to send a message or do a social issue movie.
I was really worried it was going to turn into that because it's such an easy Lifetime original movie version of this story where like, and there's going to, you know, someone's going to die, it's going to be his fault, he'll learn a valuable lesson, there'll be like statistics at the end of the film, you know, 1 in 2 teens will die from drunk driving.
That would be awful. No, I mean, it's like they say, there's only, I don't know what the number is, like 7 or 8 stories, you know what I mean, in the world, and they're just constantly retold with a different take. I think a lot of times the difference between a great film and a like really terrible film is just a matter of, are you an advocate for the characters? Are you judging the characters? Are you going for accuracy and honesty? And are you really listening? In this case, like when Shailene Woodley says to me, hey, you know, I don't know if I would say things that way. You're either the 34-year-old dude who says, no, I know what 18-year-old girls are like, and your head is up your, you know what, and like, or you listen to your actress, and you're like, okay, what would you say? I mean, that was part of, I think, how the film stayed vital and stayed honest, I think, to the way kids are, is that I listened to the young actors.
What did they say that, like, was there anything that's like, oh, I had no idea? Like, is there anything they said to you that struck you as different or not what you were thinking about for the film?
I think it was, I mean, there were broad stroke things that I was completely on the same page already with them. Like when I first sat down with Shailene, you know, we got to know each other, and then she said, so let's talk about this character, how you see this character, how I see the character, because, you know, I hope she's not a manic pixie dream girl, or just like this nerd with glasses who takes them off and, whoa, she's a beauty queen.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because she's like, because I don't really know what even a nerd is except for in bad movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Like for her, it was like, no, I think
it's me, actually. But.
But she was like, you know, I think I'm someone, you know, the character is someone who likes to read. She likes comic books. She likes science. She's interested in the future. She could care less what other people think. She, in fact, probably thinks she's smarter than everyone else. And like, and I loved her take on it that transcended easy sort of stock character things. Miles was sort of the same way. He understood that like what drives this guy is actually a real neediness to be liked, and there's kind of a sadness underneath that life of the party guy. I mean, those were the big things, and then it was sort of becoming partners with them, and then the other sort of, you know, whether it's my production designer or music supervisors, really figuring out how we're going to remove easy, obvious pop culture things and hone in on things that hopefully will last. I mean, even trying to figure out what kind of phone. It sounds so banal, but like what kind of phone this kid would have was such a, I like wrestled with it over and over, because you see movies from the late 80s and they've got these bricks that are cell phones, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ultimately it was like, no, an iPhone at the end of the day, it's kind of aesthetically, that's what we arrived at. You only see it like once or twice, but it's like aesthetically it's pretty simple. It fits in the palm of your hand, it's flat. We're probably, I don't know how much smaller we're gonna get. Like you could have a phone that's as small as a watch face, but really that's a kind of nice design where hopefully we can come back here in 25 years and you can say, man, that was a bad choice.
Oh, we're going to come back in 25 years. We're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, but hopefully that phone, and hopefully there aren't a lot of things that are just like, oh, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
That was what took the most effort, I think, as far as creating the look and feel of the world, is keeping things out.
Well, one of the other things about, I feel like the look and feel of this world is a little distinctive from your other films.
Yeah.
It feels almost pastoral in some places. And this was this the first time you worked with Jess Hall?
Yeah, this was the first time I worked with Jess Hall, the cinematographer.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about establishing that relationship and creating something, I don't know, how did you, what was your thought on creating the visual style of this? Did you have, you know, a wall of pictures of like Americana, or tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I met with the producers and the writers, you know, I was apprehensive because I'd never directed someone else's script. I'd, you know, co-written Smash, written Off the Black. And so I was just wary about that because I'm a writer. And so when I went into that meeting, I wanted to give them every reason to say, no, you're not the guy. So I was incredibly specific. I went in with a 60-page lookbook of exactly what the movie would look and feel like. I talked about, you know, my personal need to take this movie to Athens, Georgia, and shoot it there where I was born and raised, to shoot it on anamorphic 35. I talked about some of the actors, and ultimately they really embraced that. But I mean, for me, you know, and I love Jess Hall, his work, because he'd worked with anamorphic 35 a lot. I love some of the movies that he had shot, especially Son of Rambo. Yeah. And it was really important for me that, again, like a lot of those, what we were joking about, sort of the found footage, 5D, the things that look fast, cheap, and easy, like that's sort of an obvious thing with young people, you know what I mean? Which is it, and I think that's part of what's corrosive and problematic with movies about teenagers, is that it cheapens the experience and reduces it to like stereotypes, snarkiness, like whatever, like TNA jokes. And actually,
I like TNA jokes.
I like a good TNA joke too, but if that's what the character is, if that's all they are, then it's a cartoon.
You had a quasi TNA joke in this, which is just like, those are awesome.
A well-placed TNA or fart joke is great, but because kids make those jokes. But like, kids have really complicated emotional inner lives, just like adults. So the goal was to make, I never approached this as a teen movie. It was, to me, it was like, this is a complicated romance. I'm going to treat it like I would an adult romance, acknowledging like who these characters are. Like, they still live under their parents' roofs. They don't have their own salaries, things like that. But that being said, like, we wanted to dignify it and make it big and huge. And like, you know, you wouldn't disrespect, you know, like Mariel Hemingway and Woody Allen in Manhattan. You know what I mean? Like, there's an ambition and scope to that relationship, or Woman Under the Influence, or Punch Drunk Love, or whatever. Movies like that where it's like, man, that is such a romantic movie. The goal was to make something like that where people would really relate to these characters and also allow them to, you know, exist in an environment, in a world, and not just be all close-ups. So we shot it widescreen, and to have the location be one of the characters in the films, not just have it be beyond anonymous, you know what I mean? And just being totally generic looking locations. The goal was to have really, really specific locations, really, really specific actors. Yeah. And I think through specificity, you get something that's more universal.
Well, thank you. I think I made that point as well, because I feel like there's so many movies that are trying to appeal to everyone, that no one feels real because no one feels fleshed out.
Yeah.
But you were talking about sort of the ambition of the look of the film, and I think my favorite thing about this movie is you have a lot of very long takes. And a lot of movies that'll have a long take, like the Copacabana scene and Goodfellas, okay, that's there for a reason, but often it's kind of just showing off.
Yeah.
And here, it feels like you're doing it for a very specific dramatic reason. It's always leading up to a really important moment in someone's life. And I feel like that illustrates the way that these moments kind of come very naturally. Often in movies, we just sort of cut to the big moment. Yeah. You're moving, like it'll just cut right there.
Yeah.
And you see like this whole casual conversation leading up to like the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
Am I just a pretentious film critic, or was that the intent?
No, that was the intent.
Okay.
I mean, listen, there's filmmaking in films that sort of flatter the ego of the filmmaker, where it's like, look what I can do, which is nerdy and kind of just, masturbatory. And then there's like
you can shout it out loud. You don't need to swallow that. Masturbatory.
And then I think there's a film that's like serving characters and story where hopefully the craft is almost invisible. And there were definitely sequences in this film, like the first time these characters kiss. It's such a universal, such an almost cliched coming of age moment, but it can either be so generic as to say, who cares, we'll just write it off, or it can be or you can take the characters like hopes, dreams, fears seriously and make it larger than life. And that's the thing about being a teenager. Like when you're 17, like falling in love, having your heart broken, having sex for the first time, whatever, it's huge to you because you can't contextualize it. You're not in your 30s where it's happened a whole lot. Yeah. So it really feels big. And you're like drunk on hormones, so you're out of your mind on that.
and booze sometimes.
And booze sometimes. So the goal, really, I also think with long takes, it requires great actors who can handle it. But you can really, the goal with the first kiss was to have a conversation that starts totally silly. It's a drunken, meandering, goofy conversation that slowly gets, you the audience, are actually getting to see a conversation evolve from that to something that's a little more connected, a little more emotional, a little more vulnerable. I'm trusting you're not going to hurt me. My guard is down. Are we flirting? What's going on? I'm kind of nervous. Oh my gosh, you're giving me that look. We're kissing. And hopefully feels as anxious and hopeful and nerve-wracking as life, as it did for all of us when we were that age.
That was the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. That was really sweet. And I like that level of understanding is so beautiful. And I want to talk about this without ruining anything, but the ending of the film is not unlike the ending of Smash. There's a sense of ambiguity to it.
Yeah.
Is that the way the book ends? I haven't read it.
The book ends a little bit differently. The book's a little more bleak in its ending, but I think true. The book is like a first-person narrative, so it's Sutter telling you his story. He's an 18-year-old boy who's like, I'm going to tell you everything about the world, and every time an 18-year-old boy says he's going to tell you everything about the world, you shouldn't trust him.
Okay, wait a minute. Is the book like just one long college essay, like the longest college essay ever?
No, it's not that. He's kind of recounting, a lot of stuff, but it's, again, he's unreliable, and it's in his mind. So the book sort of ends on a different scene. It ends in a bar scene, that scene with the older guys, where it's much more, there's an internal journey that you've gone on, but it hasn't sort of externalized it and dramatized it, which you have to do.
So you added to it? Or
added to it, added the sequence that I think both makes it more cinematic, makes it a hair hopeful without sort of undermining the story and making it falsely Hollywood. But I think it also, again, without giving too much away, empowers Shailene Woodley's character, Amy's character, and allows her to be in a different place where the power dynamic between these two people has shifted, and where it's actually given her a power that maybe she didn't have when they first met.
Do you know how she responds after the credits start rolling? Did you have a theory? Because I find an ending like this, and again, without giving anything away, I find an ending like this is sort of a litmus test for the audience. Are you a cynic or are you an optimist?
100%. I have a take. And I think it also, depends on the person seeing the movie, whether or not they've been in sort of codependent relationships before, whether they can recognize one as such. Because I think there's one take on this movie, which just makes all the assumptions of every other teen movie ever, which is clearly this is a portrait of a perfect, made in heaven, romance, and therefore if he does something bad, he should be punished, and she should do this, and it's very moralistic, whereas relationships are really blurry, and sometimes you get something really great from someone, but there's something really unhealthy, and ultimately maybe you're not right for each other, and not everyone gets yelled at and lectured and learns an easy lesson in life. That seldom happens. That only happens in bad movies.
Well, I find almost every teen movie, that's a romance.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's in my head's like, this is full of shit. Like they're gonna go to college, like the end of Not Another Teen Movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like you're gonna go to college,
Yeah.
you're gonna break up. People grow out of this, and young love always seems like the most important thing in the world. But there's an element of disconnect now that I'm an adult.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't know, if this is gonna. So I'm almost. I don't know if I want everything to work out.
Yeah, I mean, part of what I really love about Tim's book, you know, and Scott and Mike's script is that it's not trying to be like the movie doesn't say, hey, this actually is about teenagers on Mars. It's actually the world of it. It does have those universal tropes, like the end of school, prom, graduation. We've seen them.
But you underplay them in like every turn. Like graduation, not a big deal.
Not a big
Prom,
deal.
Not this life-changing.
Totally.
You know,
it acknowledges
everyone loses their virginity moment.
That is, I mean, those things actually do happen to most people that are like turning 17 or 18. They do go through those moments. So this is a world that like hopefully an audience, a young audience or an older audience can say, yeah, I remember that. And actually this is hopefully more specific, more honest and subtly surprising. These characters are just more dimensionalized than a lot of other versions that I've seen in films before.
Yeah. Now I know you can't talk too much about your upcoming projects because no one knows how Hillary Clinton's life went. You know, it's going to be all spoilers.
Yeah.
But it seems like you've gone from these very specific character-based stories, and you're getting some ambitious projects going on. You're signed on to do Juliana Baggett's Pure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a sci-fi dystopian story. You got the Hillary Clinton story.
Yeah.
Is this nerve-wracking for you? Are you getting all the toys now? Is this like you getting to do X-Men?
No, I mean it's one of those things. I mean, I'm a real nerd for both all the movies I've seen, but also like filmographies of other filmmakers, and and there's jumps, like there's filmmakers' careers who I really admire, who I think constantly chose different projects, and it wasn't always like, oh yes, one movie was exactly like the other, which I find really liberating and exciting. The ones that I really admire are the ones that always managed to tell different stories in different genres with a level with characters that are grounded and relatable and honest, and where they maintain a sense of emotionality and truth, and just didn't get into like two-dimensional, horse crap.
You know, I look at your career, and again, you see certain parallels. You know, parental figures who are disappointing, or alcoholism, and then I see like, okay, so he's doing Hillary Clinton. Is she an alcoholic? Wait, what happened? Did I miss something? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, what are we going to see, like, in your what is the next movie right now? Because I know Hillary Clinton, it's Rodham.
Yeah, it's Rodham.
Right?
I mean,
is that going to be the next one, or what do you think is closest to fruition?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the thing that's, of note, and worth saying about Rodham, it's a really amazing script that I didn't write, but part of what I loved about it was that it's not a biopic that's like a cradle to the grave story that charts her from the time she was born to right now. It's actually a very, very, very narrow window of time in the way that like Good Night and Good Luck was that. It's her at a very specific time in the 1970s when she was in her mid-20s, when she was part of this House Judiciary Committee group of lawyers that were put together.
It sounds like Young Mr. Lincoln. Did you ever see that?
I did, and I love that movie. And she was, there was this group of lawyers that were bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats alike, very intentionally so. She was one of only 3 women, so it was mostly men. And they were there to try to create a legal foundation to impeach Nixon. It wasn't about partisan politics, which we trade in so much now. It was people who saw a breach of justice in the White House and really wanted to preserve American democracy. She was doing that while she was trying to balance her relationship with her boyfriend, Bill, who was in Arkansas. So it's actually about a woman, someone, not that old, like at a crossroads in her life, choosing between love and career, which is very relatable and has nothing to do with celebrity and has nothing to do with, again, like being Republican or Democrat or anything like that. So it'll be grounded in character. It's a really complicated character portrait.
Is it going to be difficult resisting the urge to like foreshadow? Like
not for me.
Is this going to be a scene where Bill Clinton just looking at some chick across the bar like, so? Like you're gonna, or like Phantom Menace, like, oh yes, I really hope you're the chosen one. Like anything.
I mean, I would do that if it was a story about psychics, but like, you know what I mean? But it's not a story about psychics, so no one can know their future. So in this case, it's like, the truth is, like, when Nixon stepped down, like this movie essentially ends. So everything that came after, in the life of when she became Hillary Clinton, like everything that is controversial, everything, it's not of importance to me because it has nothing to do with the story that I'm telling. In fact, I wouldn't feel comfortable telling those stories, and that's better for like an op-ed writer in a newspaper to talk about. For me, again, I know hopefully how to create a character that's full and how to dramatize a life, and that's really what's interesting to me is human nature, not celebrity or easy stereotypes.
Which must make it frustrating that like the only thing people want to talk about in this movie is the casting.
yeah. I mean, I understand why they would. It's almost like a fun party game.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now we're just like engaged with the script and trying to make it really, really fantastic, which is which is hard. It's hard to get any script good and to make something that's like a good story with good characters. And then when you additionally have the scrutiny of political people from the left and right sort of analyzing it, it adds a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of talk right now about that NBC miniseries.
Yeah, yeah.
I've only heard your film sort of mentioned tangentially. But are you nervous about that when there's another project that's kind of along this? Because that's more of a cradle of the grave bit. That's what it sounds like.
I mean, I don't know. I only know honestly what I read online and stuff about it, which is that it is Hillary Clinton from the late '90s to the present. So it's her mostly in
So you're the prequel.
Midlife. I have nothing to do with it. Also, that's a 4-hour TV miniseries, which is a very, very different thing. Like I would never, like anybody who's making a film, I don't think they say, oh man, I'm making a film about police officers. There was a miniseries or TV show about police officers. Somehow we're in competition. I don't see them as having anything to do with each other.
Right. Yeah. All right. And you're also, I heard that you're adapting Pippin.
Yeah.
Now, is that just to write, or are you going to direct that as well?
That's just to write.
That's just to write.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we go out, could you sing your favorite song from Pippin?
No way. No, absolutely not.
In fact, you're cutting out all the songs.
No, there's songs, but they will not be sung by someone. They'll be sung by someone with a good voice. There's a reason I'm behind the camera usually. Yes, that would be awful. You will lose.
Is this going to be a grim and gritty Pippin? Are we going to adapt this to the modern age?
No, this is actually really truthful to what's fun about Pippin's really fun. It's hilarious. I mean, it's a really fun show. There's an amazing production on Broadway right now. That's a total blast. So no, it'll be fun, and fans of it hopefully will love it. Yeah.
Awesome, man. You want to say anything to the audience right now about Spectacular Now? Make sure they go see it.
Yeah, man. Spectacular Now is in theaters. It's sort of expanding nationwide. Please check it out. Tell your friends. Tweet about it. Write on Facebook. Whatever. We need all the support we can get. It's a word-of-mouth film, and I hope you really enjoy it.
And I think it's a little spectacular. Thank you very much.
Thank you.